Hello and welcome back to another episode of LMScast. My name is Chris Badgett, and today we have a special guest, Calvin Correli from Simplero. How you doing, Calvin?
I'm doing fantastic. Hi, Chris. It's good. It's great to be here in your company.
Awesome. Well, Calvin has something similar to what we have at LifterLMS. It's a platform.
Oh my God, are we competitors?
We are.
Oh God, I need to hate you now.
and we're gonna talk about why it's cool and why we're okay with that. But Simplero is an all-in-one platform for delivering your courses or your online content. It's a complete marketing solution as well. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But first, we're going to get into Calvin's story and some of his ways of approaching life and business, and dig into that and talk about some lessons learned and have some conversations that might benefit you as a online course creator, or membership site owner, or someone needing to do digital marketing. But Calvin, welcome to the show. Tell the listener out there a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and like what makes you tick as a human being.
Yeah. I grew up in Denmark, and I grew up with computers and software. My mom started a software company in 1980 and grew that to 50 people. Both my parents were pretty early onto the computer bandwagon, if not like super early. And so I love that. And I was working as an entrepreneur for myself for many years around with software. And it was always a struggle. And then that kind of led me to coaching and working with a spiritual teacher. And that led me to realizing that these tools that I had learned would be super useful for other entrepreneurs that I saw who were also struggling. And that led me to start to do online courses back in 2008, which led me to create Simplero. And then that kind of took over and became a business of its own. And that's been my focus for the past several years. So what I realized about myself at one point was that I'm really about being of service to people. Just just knowing that I'm serving people better than they've ever been served before, like that makes me just like super high and excited. And I also realized that I had these kind of two sides to me that which was like kind of the spiritual side where I was kind of I feel like in contact with something deeper and connected with like trying to figure out what's really going on inside of people and connect that with, at that level and through the heart, if you will. And then there's the other side of me that was very left brain, very, business and programming and numbers and all that stuff. And about 10 years ago, I realized that I had completely suppressed sort of the spiritual side and I definitely very much separated these two sides of my being. And I decided that I realized that that's what I'm about. I feel like that's my purpose here, is to really combine these two sides. So being spiritual, but not in a way that it doesn't compromise my business brain. It just informs that part of me. And we make it work really beautifully together.
That's cool. Well, let's dig into that. One of my favorite words is integration. So how do you integrate spirituality and entrepreneurship? Like what have there been some struggles in that, or like once you just accepted that they're going to play in the same sandbox, it's just the way you roll? Like how does it play out for you?
Yeah, I would say yes to both if I can. Yeah. I think anyone who's on a spiritual journey knows that like it's not like a one-time thing, right? It's just like meditation. The way meditation basically works is you come back to the breath and to that feeling of presence, or one way I like to describe it is like allowing everything to be as it is, letting go of all resistance to anything being the way it is. And then you get caught up in some thoughts somewhere and you get down, and then all you need to do is just bring the focus and the awareness back on the breath and get back to that place of allowing everything to be as it is. And that's really like, that's what life is like. That's what a meditation is like. That's, what my every day of my life is like. I'm like, oh my God, I just realized I got lost in thought. Like, breath, come back. Even when I'm working, even when I'm talking to someone. And so it's the same. Like, you will get lost in thought. You will get caught up in ego stuff and get triggered by old things. And then it's like, might take you for a ride that actually might last a few months, or it might just last a few moments, depending on what's going on. So yes, it has been a struggle in that way. On the other hand, it's also been pretty easy. It was really like that, after that moment of me realizing that, everything started to click together, because before that, everything I'd done had been about kind of proving myself, or, becoming successful, making money. I felt like I always had to accomplish something or become something in order to feel that I was worthy or I was good enough. And once I realized, well, that pattern may still be there, but what I really want to create is to create, the products that I would love to use, to create the business that I would love to work in and be a customer of, to create the products that I would really love to see, versus like, let me try to make something that's going to make money. Let me figure out what is going to make money. It doesn't interest me a whole lot, because like, what's the point of making money if it doesn't allow me to do something that I want to do? Like, and again, like, well, then there's like, you go to work and make the money so you can go on vacation. That was never appealing to me. Like, I'm very creative. I love creating things. So I just want the money to enable me to create the things that I want to create, because I enjoy creating them. So
that's awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about how the spiritual piece can inform decisions in entrepreneurship, or even just knowing yourself and knowing your values inform entrepreneurship. One example I would just throw out there is, you mentioned in the beginning of the show that we're, in fact, in some ways competitors. But for me, like, the spiritual person in me, the values in me, I really care about course creators and these creative education entrepreneurs. As long as whatever we're doing is in service to them, that's really my highest and best use. Like, I wouldn't, and I heard you're a great guy to talk to, so why would I not do that? because we may be competitors. So that's one way for me. But what about you? Like, how does that spiritual nature inform business in a unique way, perhaps, or a counterintuitive way?
Well, on many levels. I mean, this definitely one of them. Like, I want to support people who are creating things wherever they're creating things. So you're creating your work and your piece of art, your product, and that's amazing. All more power to you. I think there's several levels. Like, apart from what I just talked about, there's also, for me, that as a founder, as the entrepreneur, there's that part where whenever I'm faced with some kind of challenge, I will tend to address it at multiple levels. There's I like to think of it as like, body, mind, and spirit. So like, at the body level, if you will, there's like, what are the concrete action steps that I can take that are going to make a difference here? For example, could be hiring. Was like, finding really good talent to hire and to work with was a struggle for me for quite a while, until the past last year, basically, beginning of last year, that really transformed. And then, so that would be the action level, is like let's write an ad, or let's run some kind of recruiting process, or like, what are we going to do for this? The mind level would be like, what kind of beliefs and thoughts do I have around this topic? Is it like, one of the things that was challenging me was like, I don't feel like I'm worthy of working with good people, or like, I'm like, who would want to work with me, and like that kind of thing. So that's good to look at. And then kind of the level of spirit would be just like dropping the words and going even deeper into like, if I put myself, for example, one of the things I love to do is like imagining myself being where I would want to be with this, like working with amazing people and having this great chemistry and all that, which is exactly what I have now, which is amazing. And then just notice what happens inside of my body. Where is my body getting contracted? And what does it feel like that may be connected to or familiar to? And just like sitting with that and eyes closed and just like exploring and loving everything that comes up in that process. So I kind of call that the spiritual level I also work with a healer and like visualization and these things. And I just find that once I start to look at a problem at all those three levels, that's when it really starts to move. And yeah, it really has.
So how, could you give a little more detail on how it started to move for you? You said, I think a year ago, in terms of a hiring struggle, like what got better?
Yeah. Well, what got better is the most beautiful thing, because I was in this, not exactly custody battle. I was in a battle with my ex-wife over, she lives in Copenhagen with my kids, and she decided suddenly at the end of the year before that it would be best for our kids if they didn't see their dad at all. And funnily enough, I disagreed. And so I ended up having to go through the legal system and they basically sided with me. So now I'm seeing them, which is amazing. But what I also did was I had to fly to Copenhagen to go to a meeting there. And on that trip, I happened to meet this young programmer, and we just hit it off chemistry wise. And then after I got home, I emailed him. I was like, hey, would you like be interested in doing some contract work for me? And he was like, sure, why not? That could be fun. And so we had like 5 hours a week, and we did that for a while. And I was like, dude, I want to have you full time. And then, a few months later, that just kind of worked out. And so that, what's so beautiful about it is that like I did all of this work, and then the right person just like showed up. It wasn't as a response to a job ad. It wasn't, it wasn't anything. It was
you weren't like, forcing it.
He just showed up, and it was exact right time. And that just, that relationship then transformed me, because this guy is super smart. And that showed me how important that is, and how much fun it is to work together with someone who's super smart. And then that led me to be like, realize that another team member I had wasn't working. And then not because she's not smart, but because it wasn't in the right fit for her. And then on and on. And then just like a completely new team. And like everybody just kind of happened. It wasn't like we needed someone else to do customer service. And then I was like, let's ask in our community to see if there might be someone. And, I hired someone I'd been using as an assistant to help out with that. And she was like, I believe in this one. And then we hired her, and it was perfect. She's still with us. It's amazing. So
that's a great story. And I think the concept of like trying to force things, I mean, especially like if you're a startup, you got to be scrappy and you're like executing all these processes that you've read about, heard about, done before.
Yeah.
Part of the spiritual approach is like letting go, or let it be, or be here now, or whatever. And it's almost more effortless.
That Buddha saying of like, not too tight, not too loose, like how you tune a sitar.
Okay.
Supposedly the Buddha said, the sitar player asked him like about how to meditate and how to like whatever his thoughts or something, and the Buddha answered, not too tight, not too loose, just like you do with your sitar. And I think that's the thing, like you don't want to be just like wishy-washy in the wind, but you don't want to hold on. So for me, it's very much about like holding on to that vision and just showing up every day. And if it starts to feel like work, if it starts to feel like not fun, if it starts to feel like a struggle, then I'm like, well, something needs to change. I might still like sit at the computer and like, it doesn't mean I walk away from the project or from working at it. It's just like, well, I will for a bit, but I'm like, it just means something has to change. I have to find a different way around this. Sometimes I might leave it for a month or two and then come back to it if it's still important to me. Depending on what it is.
That's really cool. Well, let's dig into that a little deeper. If we look at like a course creator out there, or somebody looking to, come online or try to actually build out an online business full-time or on the side with education. There's a thing I notice sometimes where some people kind of get in this like make money online trap, and they get really focused on that and executing on tactics that are supposed to work to help you make money online. Through that process, people often miss their most valuable asset, which is just being themselves and really, caring about their students or their learners or their prospective customers, and really focusing on their problems, not executing marketing tactics. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need to build a business. You need to, there's certain pieces you need to put in place and best practices. But what, with your awareness as a kind of in spiritual entrepreneurship and living on purpose, what what are some kind of pitfalls you see out there, and how do you advise people if they're getting a little bit off track or a little bit too focused on the money and things aren't working? What should they do?
Right. Oh boy, where do we start? Pay attention to your body, right? Like, how are you feeling in your body? If you're tense, if you're feeling scared, if like, what is going on in your body? And take that as cues, as input that informs you. Oftentimes I'll see people like do things and write in ways that just doesn't feel genuine for them. And I'm like, just trust that you don't have to do that, and like, and pay attention to that. Put yourself in the shoes of your clients, of your customers, of your recipients. Like, how do you like to be communicated to? How do you like to be treated as a customer, as a client, and make sure that you treat other people the way that you want to be treated, not because of the golden rule, but because that's what works, right? What works for you and what really makes you connect with the people that you want to buy from and make you respect them. Trust and the relationship that you have with your audience is your number one asset. And, it's easily squandered when you, it's easier to squander than to build. But it's easily built when you're just being real with people. So.
Yeah. And that's, even like, this video, this is a podcast, you may just be listening, but there's a video version on YouTube, and I've done a lot of videos for various things over the course of LifterLMS, and people often say, like, I appreciate how like authentic you are, like you're just talking, it's not, there's not all this like wizardry going on,
right.
And people appreciate that. Are you perhaps familiar with a Dutch guy named Wim Hof?
I'm not, no.
He's known as the Iceman. I just took an online course from him.
Okay.
I'm all about online courses from every single angle, but I took it, and he does a lot of stuff with breathing, cold exposure, and meditation. And he's like climbed Mount Everest in shorts. He does all these things under the ice. And I went through his training program and did a bunch of ice exposure, cold exposure, and work through the breathing methods he does. And I got a lot of
the cold exposure, like in the shower or in the
you can do it in the shower,
ice cubes, or
bath. Right out my window is the Atlantic Ocean, so I can actually go down to the ocean, or like a freezing river, that kind of thing. But you can just do it in the bath and the shower. Yeah. But through his whole thing, like, once you see Wim Hof, like maybe after this interview, just Google and find a video or check him out. I've never seen somebody in an online course format be so genuinely themselves. He's just kind of a wild Dutch guy that, he's developed this system and he's worked on it for years, and he's funny. Sometimes he curses. He's like, has fun. He jokes. It's like,
what does it do for you?
It does a lot of things. It helps with sleep. It helps with stress. It helps with just mental focus, and actually, it actually helps with pain. Like, I have chronic low back pain that I've struggled with for a long time, and it's helped me kind of work on that. It has like all these different benefits. I'd say the big one though is just an overall reset of the autonomic nervous system when you go through the exercises.
Gotcha.
So it's very cool. But I mean, just like on the authenticity note, I've never had so much fun just in an online course, just experiencing somebody who was able to like capture that learning journey and teaching and all this in an online format. It was so cool. And I wish everybody could, do that. Like all the course creators out there, not everybody has to be all, funny mountain man guy, right. But it's just so refreshing.
Yeah. And I think sometimes what happens is like, if you have a belief system that goes like, well, I'm not worthy of this, and like, who should listen to me, and I don't have anything of value, even though you do, right? But you have all these stories going on in your head, then it might actually be a little tricky to be like, it's like, it might be easier to like put on the marketing persona than to actually try to connect, because this stuff gets in the way. So the other piece of advice I would give people is like, really, really investigate your thoughts. And I'm madly in love these days. Like, Have you ever heard of Byron Katie?
Yeah.
Yeah, Loving What Is.
Yeah.
I read that book first like 10 years ago in 2007. And then I kind of like forgot, and then I come back, and then I forgot, and then I came back to it. And like recently, like a month and a half ago, I just went on a binge, and I got every single audio program on audible.com. She has a lot of recordings from live seminars and workshops. And I'm like, God, this is so awesome, right? Because like we can work on all kinds of things, but if we don't like look at our thoughts and how we're torturing ourselves with our thoughts and keep perpetuating things that are not true and that are hurting us, then like to a large extent, nothing else that we do is going to matter.
Is that how you look at, you mentioned some things around self-love and self-hate. Is examining your thoughts how you become aware of that, or where do you go with that?
Yeah, it's like examining, like noticing in your body when you're feeling stress, and then identifying like what is the thought that's causing me this stress now. Like usually it's some sort of like, you know, resistance to something, like I should be different, or this should be different, or like something about the future, or like this is gonna, you know, be awful, or whatever it is. And the realization is like, but you need to do it like as an inner realization for yourself. But it always ends back to, you know, that whatever is causing you pain is not whatever is out there. It's your thinking that it should be different. It's your thinking about it that's causing this pain. And so unless you address that, you know, the tendency for all of us is to, well, you know, if only I had more money or more customers or more success or different leaders or different, like, or my partner was different, or like my body was, or whatever, then I would feel better. And that stuff, that is never true. That is never, ever true, right? You will feel better for like 30 seconds or maybe at most like 30 hours. But then there's going to be a new goal. There's going to be a new goal. There's going to be a new goal, because that whole process, like that's the self-hate part of it, is not here to make you happy. It's here to like keep scaring you and make you unhappy. And you don't have to get any amount of money or success or physical or anything in order to find happiness. It's right here all the time, every moment. So
where does the self-hate come from? Or lack of that urge to push you out of the present moment to some better future state?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the urge to get out of the present moment to a future state is a belief that there's something wrong with the current moment, you know, that needs to be improved, and it's going to be better at some point in the future. And so that's just the thought that we happen to believe. And an important point is that, like, I used to think that, well, like whenever this thought would enter my head, that something that like, oh, this might happen, or I'm a failure, or like I'm not good, or whatever. I thought that just because the thought enters my mind must be because there's some truth to it, which is totally not the case. We have thoughts in our heads all the time that have zero truth value whatsoever. So getting like that disconnect between, just because it's a thought doesn't mean I have to believe in it, and then realizing that you know, it's not true. Sorry, I totally lost my train of thought there. What was your question again?
No, just like where does it come from? Where does it come from?
Yeah. I think it comes from when we were kids, right? I mean, our parents were brought up that way. It's like, well, you need to, you know, do this, and then you can be like, stop doing that, don't do that, it's too much, you're like this, and be that. And so we learn to always monitor ourselves and be like, oh, am I good enough? Am I not good enough? And then like punish ourselves when we're like not meeting whatever standard, and rewarding ourselves when we are. And I think as kids, we internalize like, I have a need for attention or food or whatever, and it's not being met by my parents. And we just tend to internalize that as like, it must be because of something in me. You know, if I was perfect, if I was better, if I was good enough, then I would be. And then that system just keeps going and going and going. And it can go for a very long time. I've done it and we all still do it, right? It's like, I still do it. Like until I wake up out of it. But it's like, yeah, like get on the scale in the morning and like, oh shit, it's like, what am I like? Oh, if only I was a few pounds lighter, I would feel better. It's like, you know what? Actually, experience tells me that I will for a very little bit, and then it won't really matter.
So is self-love basically the opposite of that?
Yes.
Like be in the moment and everything's okay. And like go easy on yourself. Like even though you have 2 extra pounds, it's okay. It's still okay to be happy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, why wouldn't it be okay to be happy? Like, how does being unhappy make anything better?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, it's like self-love kind of ends up being everything love, which ends up being just not resisting anything. Like the whole thought mind, the whole ego mind is resisting what is. That's all it is. It's all it does. And as long as that's in control, it's going to find something to resist. Like, go to the most perfect, beautiful beach and the weather is amazing and whatever. There's like fresh coconut water and it's just, give it like 3 or 4 days. I betcha you're going to find something to complain about. It's just how it is. It's just how it works. And that's fine. I think the point is just like just to get back to business is to always be mindful of how this stuff works and realize that it's not like, enjoy what you're doing right now and do things that you're proud of and that makes you happy right now, that you know just feel good to you to do, and that is, building towards your business, and then trust that it's all going to work out.
Right on. Well, what would you advise like somebody who's building a membership site or a course, like in terms of, get in touch with their authenticity, but then in the method that they teach or treat other people in their platform, what do you see? What's some advice you have for somebody trying to figure out, maybe they're an expert at something, but they're not necessarily trained as a teacher. Like, how do you really connect with people in this world?
Genuinely, like, focus on genuinely being of service to people. Like, how can I serve these people today? Like, let that be your curiosity. A tendency I think that I definitely can see in myself and is like, like what I need something. What can I get? Like, what can I do so I get this thing for me? Need more opt-ins. I need more, like, whatever it is. And I'm not saying that's wrong necessarily, but like, I think it's really helpful to be like, have that focus of like, how do I genuinely serve these people? Like, respect them. How do I, what is it that they need? What is it that I can do? Where is the confusion, or where is the thing that I can answer or help them with? And just focus on that every day. Like, why did you get into this business in the first place, right? What was it that drew you to it? Sure, it's a way to make money, but I bet there's something much deeper than that just lights you up about it. I want to work with amazing people and see what they're doing and just like have fun. Great. Let's connect with that energy and make sure that we bring that into our work every day.
I love that. One way I think to say that too is be of value. Don't just try to extract value. Like, email addresses, money for courses or memberships or whatever. Like, you need to figure out the mechanics of that, but I mean, focus. It's all about delivering value to the people and loving what you do. Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about Simplero a little bit.
And just stay with it. Like, that's what I've seen over and over again in all kinds of areas, is like, if you just, stick with it, like, even if it's just like for your business an hour a day, even just 20 minutes a day, just like keep at it, keep doing it. And eventually, and like, keep being curious about yourself, about your customers, about the whole process. Eventually you're going to nail something.
Absolutely.
You're starting out. Yeah. Are we talking? Yes.
And you, I think you were mentioning earlier that you were getting around. Simplero is about 8 years old, mm-hmm. which shows a track record of sticking with it. I'm sure there were some ups and downs in early days. Maybe definitely maybe it wasn't going to work. You didn't know. Like,
yeah. There were moments where I was like, oh shit, I can't. Maybe I'll sell this thing. I don't want to do this anymore. And what kept me going was I had customers and they were using it and they were excited about it and they were asking me questions and I was like, I can't ever let these people down, you know? So like I have to keep going. And then like it reminds me of that like Stephen Pressfield concept of turning pro. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but like I can't just like I have to show up for these people. They depend on me. It's their livelihoods. They're feeding their families and their kids through this business. I need to show up. So that pulled me through it. It's been a few years since that, like I think 5 years since I ever had that kind of thought or idea. But yeah, it really helped to have that relationship and that respect with and towards and from my customers to pull me through that. Yeah. And I'm so glad that I kept going.
That's awesome. Yeah. And that trust that they put in you, I mean, if you needed to close it up, you can do that. But I mean, people put their trust in you, like you said, and they, they've built their life around it. So that's a good motivator there.
Yeah.
Well, when I look at Simplero, I've done a lot of work over the years, agency work. I have a product in the same space. I've been around a lot of different membership sites and online courses and marketing things. But it just looks like a complete end-to-end solution. Like it's like this might be the elusive all-in-one platform.
Right. Yeah, that's the idea.
What is the top bullet point like feature areas that it addresses?
Right. Well, let's start with opt-ins. So lists and opt-ins and all of that, the ethical bribe, the whatever you give them, which could also be like a drip course or whatever you want to make it, modals that you put on your website or like all of that stuff. Products, anything you want to charge for, however you want to charge it. And, you can sell lectures, workshops, seminars. You can sell coaching sessions, ebooks, online courses, videos, audios, drip, whatever you want. We don't really support things that need to be physically shipped. That's kind of the delineation, but anything, pretty much anything else. And then to the membership sites and delivering content and like a discussion forum and in the membership site and all that stuff. Your website, you can do your website on Simplero as well. It's our most recent major addition, which is really, really cool. Just like a beautiful, simple website builder that's designed for what we do. So it has like a box for testimonials. It can show your products and say like if you're one of those businesses that has multiple products that people can buy and all that. Affiliate tracking, landing pages that you can have as like separate things that you can send traffic to for squeeze pages as like to get emails or for as sales pages for your products. And what else we got? I think we got pretty much everything that you need for that business.
Awesome. And so sometimes we say that if you're the best solution is not always, it's different depending upon what your needs are. And you've got a really awesome all-in-one platform here, and it's a hosted, like the Simplero hosts the website.
Yeah.
So you don't have to deal with all the stuff. Right. Like we're in the WordPress space. You own your website. You got to deal with updates. WordPress is open source. Things are changing. You're installing other plugins. That's not for everybody.
Right.
So,
absolutely. Yeah, and I think the thing is, so like sending email and autoresponders and like automations and all that stuff we have too. I think for a lot of people, it's just that knowing that there's one place to go to for support when things break. It's like they know it's us, and we will take care of them. We will help it out. We'll get it fixed. It's not like you don't get thrown around between oh, it's not really our fault. It's the hosting company. It's this other plugin creating the like whatever it is. Like, nah.
That's awesome. Well, let me ask you a question, just as an entrepreneur, and but also keeping in mind, like for course creators, if they have a diverse skill set or knowledge base. When I look at something like Simplero, and I know just as well from being in the learning management system space and all of the e-commerce and all the stuff involved. it's like an infinite, there's like, if you're going to do the complete solution, it's very easy to get like, to go down a rabbit hole over here or this, but like how, I guess my question would be from a software company perspective, how do you prioritize things in your product roadmap and make sure only the essential features stay in, and more, or that you build towards and make sure, because it's like, you know, if I were to talk and name brands and stuff like that, this is like a combination of Infusionsoft, lead pages, membership site stuff, just different, all these other disjointed things, and you were able to bring it all together.
Yeah.
So how, and that's hard to do. It's really hard to do.
It's a lot of work. I can attest to that.
But how do you stay focused, and how do you prioritize it? Or is it really just as simple as staying focused on what your customer needs without having to go anywhere else? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of that, like, it really helped that I was doing this business on my own to begin with. So I really understand it, and I really know, like, I have a good strategic mind. So I have a really good sense of what you need and what you don't, kind of thing. Like, we put a lot of effort into coming up with kind of the simplest solutions that we can. I see a lot of, you know, programmers that have this tendency to like just write more code and more details and more features than are needed, and it ends up being really costly for everybody. It's costly to do and maintain, and users get confused and stuff. And I'm not going to say we always get it perfectly, but that's really what we strive to do. Like, I built this pretty much solo for like 5 or 6 years, and so it had to be simple enough for me to build and maintain on my own. Right? I didn't have the luxury of you know, a large outsourced team or whatever in India. So yeah, and so we have a pretty good sense of, like, from a big picture place. I spent quite a bit of time, like, really digging into the vision for this product, what it is, what it isn't, and how it all hangs together. And that stayed fairly consistent. I did that pretty early on. It stayed very, very stable. So that's a testament to the kind of the quality of that, which is very, very helpful. Because, like, I think that's the biggest danger is, like, when the vision keeps shifting around, then you can kind of see that in the product over time, and it just becomes this mishmash. And then, our customers, they keep telling us what they want to see. And it's one of the things that we enjoy the most is that close collaboration with customers. And just, what was it, yesterday or the day before? No, I think it was the day before. It was like, finally, like, the end customer was like, hey, like, you know, that pre-header in the emails that people can see in their Gmail inbox under the subject line, or like whatever email they use. I'd really like to customize that and be able to say, you know, decide what it's going to say. And we're like, yeah, you know what, let's just get it down. And so
right.
Nick sat down and he got it done in a few hours and push it out. And those kinds of, when those moments happens where it's right there, and, like, the customer's asking for it, and we're like, all right, let's just get it done, you know, and then we can do it, and we can get back to the customer and say, here you go, where it's done. You know, that's what we live for. That's the most fun thing ever. So that can be like small things or biggish things, or things that seem very big but end up being very small. They're also the opposite. Things that seem very small but end up being very big.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, for those of you listening, go check it out at simplero.com, simplero.com. And just to kind of close it out, Calvin, I want to thank you and honor you for coming on the show and sharing your experience and just kind of jamming together about all these issues that entrepreneurs and education entrepreneurs specifically face, and how you've dealt with them and stuff like that. I love your last point about staying true to the vision. Like, it's more effortless if you, like, really get clear on your vision and then just stay with it. Mm-hmm. And if you're clear with it, it's probably going to stick for a while, if not your whole life. Could you for us, just kind of as a parting thought, articulate that vision that you know has stayed true for you over these years, and like how you wanted to serve?
That's a very good question. Are you looking for something specific that you saw, or are you just like asking?
Well, you mentioned that because your vision has been the same for the past.
Right. Yeah. No. Okay, got it. I don't know that I can necessarily, because for me, it's like I've done this with other entrepreneurs where like you start some business and then you get lost in like the details and you kind of forget what it was all about. And then what I've done is I've brought like usually like a founder team together in a guided meditation, and
Okay.
then close your eyes, and then I'll guide them through this process of like reconnecting with that moment. And I really think think about it this way: of like we're getting touched by something that like inspires us literally to start this business. And so bringing people back to that moment of connecting with what made me want to do this. And it's a very felt thing. And then from there, I've seen these amazing processes of like people just like realizing and starting to cry and just like having these like, this is what it was all about. Like, and I just got lost in the struggle, right? And so it's a very felt thing. But the idea is basically take someone who's really good at what they have to teach and offer, and really like care about their audience and how they can help them. One of the other things, backtracking a second, not very good at being short. One of the other things was that I had this vision in 2008 of how I wanted to do my part in transforming consciousness on planet Earth through entrepreneurship. So like create these businesses and products that touch people's soul in a deeper way. And it's funny, Steve Jobs actually talked about that. Like products can have a sense of enlightenment about them that affect people. And so Simplero is one of those things. And I realized that instead of me like sitting down and doing kind of one-on-one transformational work with a bunch of people, I could write software that enabled other people to do transformational work with people. And basically anything that like has that, where you have that openness to change, like whatever it is, learning something new is like, there's an openness, there's an expansion. And I love that. So I want to support that in any way. So the vision is really for anyone who has that kind of aura about them of like wanting to teach, to expand themselves and their clients' lives, etc. I want it to be like super easy for them to go in and just, we take care of all the things that can be automated, all the things that are technical, and you can just focus on, building your relationship with your audience and transforming their lives and transforming you as in the process.
That's awesome.
That's the very short vision.
Well, in the spirit of staying with what is, I'm going to ask you another question because it's coming up for me. And that is, I think you just mentioned it. You referenced Steve Jobs saying how products could have a spirit, or I think I also heard you say in another video or something about that, like products having a soul or your business having a soul.
Yeah.
Could you speak to that a little bit? Like, I mean, you're the creator of Simplero.
Mm-hmm.
We're entrepreneurs. We have companies. We have businesses. The people out there listening are creating, their own membership sites or course or education companies. How can this concept of the business or the work of art having a soul, can you help shine the light on that just a little more before we go?
Yeah, I think it's for me, it's where I go to when I need to make decisions about it. And also for motivation. And it's a place that I go very, very often. It's like, this is what this is about. And there's me and what I'm about as a founder. And then there's the product and the company and what they're about. And it's really tuning into a very felt sense of like, what is it? And it doesn't necessarily have words, but it really helps me make decisions and get into a more grounded, like, I like to think of it as like, employing my whole mind body instead of just like my mind, so letting my mind be part of my body and letting my body and all the awareness that's in my body be part of my mind and inform decisions. So yeah, it's hard to put in words. It's like, it's very operational. It's very practical in making choices.
Well, it's a feeling. I know what you mean. Like if you're at a great, if you're in a great company or having some kind of great experience with a product,
Right.
whatever that is. Like there's a feeling it kind of has its own
Yeah.
vibe.
I feel like often
whatever.
I can feel it like restaurants.
Yeah.
Similar, like you go into some places and you're like, you get a weird feeling like I'm not really getting a read on what is this, what's going on, and how do they want me to feel, or like that kind of thing, versus like some other places that are just beautifully designed and you're like, okay, yes, here I clicks, and it might not be my taste, but at least I know exactly what's going on here.
Yeah. I have a theory with restaurants and actually just cooking in general that one of the best things to do, like to make great food, is it has to be made with love.
Absolutely.
And you can tell, like I can tell. Yeah, it's
yeah. Which is why it's completely crap that we pay, like that cooks are generally paid minimum wage, and like when you tip, it doesn't go to the cooks, it only goes to the wait staff by law, and like all that stuff. It's pretty messed up how that works.
Right. For sure. Well, Calvin Correli, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming on the show. Where else besides Simplero.com can people go to find you and connect with you on the web?
Well, they can show up at my door. That might be a little awkward if we haven't talked before, but no. On the interwebs, you may find me at calvincorreli.com, which is my full name. I'm sure you'll put a link somewhere.
Yeah.
I have a blog, and I have this video show that I do called The Calvin Show, and I have a newsletter there as well that I write to occasionally. And please feel free to like write me back if you hear this. Email me. These ways to get on the newsletter, and then you'll get emails from me, and then you can just hit reply to those, and I'll see it. And I'll respond. I always respond to my email.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on the show.
That was a big promise. Do I have to do it forever now?
Yep, this video will be live forever.
Yes.
So,
gotcha.
All right. Well, thank you, and have a great rest of your day, and we should do this again sometime.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was really fun. I was really glad to meet you, and thank you to everyone who listened or watched for sticking with us and for being here and for doing what you're doing.